In a quiet village surrounded by thick forests, there lived a boy named Chinedu. Chinedu was different. While other children laughed and played under the hot afternoon sun, Chinedu preferred the silence of dusk. He would sit alone beneath an old iroko tree at the edge of the village, whispering, not to himself, but to shadows. The villagers noticed. At first, they laughed. "Strange boy," they said. Then they grew afraid because sometimes the shadows whispered back. Chinedu lived with his grandmother, Mama Ngozi, a wise old woman who had seen many seasons. She warned him constantly, "My child, not everything that listens should be spoken to." But Chinedu didn't understand. The shadows were kind. They listened when no one else did. They told him secrets, things no child should know, like who would fall sick next, like which crops would fail, like who was lying even when they smiled. One evening, Chinedu ran into the village square, breathless. "The river would take someone tonight," he cried. The villagers froze, but then they laughed. "Go back to your shadows, boy," they mocked. That night, heavy rain fell. By morning, the strongest fisherman in the village had drowned. Fear spread across the village. Suddenly, Chinedu was no longer just a strange boy. He was dangerous. Days passed. The village chief, Chief Okafor, summoned Mama Ngozi. "Your grandson brings fear to this village," he said. "If this continues, we will send him away." Mama Ngozi returned home with tears in her eyes. "Chinedu," she whispered, "promise me you will stop speaking to them." Chinedu hesitated. "But they help me." "No," she said firmly, "they are using you." That night, Chinedu sat beneath the iroko tree. The shadows gathered closer than ever before. "You heard her. She wants you to leave us," they whispered. Chinedu shook his head. "I can't talk to you anymore." The shadows grew darker, thicker. "You need us," they hissed. "Without us, you are nothing." For the first time, Chinedu felt afraid. Days later, the village fell into chaos. Children began falling ill. Crops withered overnight. And worst of all, Chinedu stopped speaking. The villagers blamed him. "He has angered the spirits," they cried. Chief Okafor made his decision. At sunrise, the boy must leave the village. That night, Mama Ngozi held Chinedu tightly. "My son, do you trust me?" she asked. Chinedu nodded. "Then listen carefully. Tonight, you must face them, not as a friend, but as their master." With trembling legs, Chinedu returned to the iroko tree. The shadows were waiting. "We warned you," they whispered. Chinedu's voice shook, but he stood firm. "You are not my friends, you are my fear." The shadows laughed. "You are just a child." Chinedu closed his eyes, remembering his grandmother's words. Then he shouted with all his strength, "I am not afraid of you." Silence. Then a piercing scream echoed through the forest. The shadows twisted, shrinking, fading into nothing. And just like that, they were gone. Morning came. The sun shone brighter than it had in weeks. The sick began to recover. The air felt lighter. And Chinedu smiled again. The villagers gathered around him, no longer afraid. But Mama Ngozi simply placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "My child, not every voice that speaks to you deserves your attention." Moral lesson. Not everything that listens to your pain wants to heal you. Some things feed on it. Choose your influences wisely.